Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Edge of Paradise, Prophecy, out March 7th on Napalm Records. This album has 10 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's 6th full-length studio album. They are an American metal band. As far as Prophecy is concerned, this album is very well crafted, is very well constructed. They put together a track listing that emphasizes the diversity that exists within the record, but it also brings together all the things that the album has in common and allows the experience on one hand to be very cohesive and on the other to be very dynamic. This makes for a great listening experience. The alternating of tracks between songs that are a little bit more driven, a little bit bigger, with a more almost cinematic approach, with songs that have a little bit of a darker vibe, more introspective, ballads, softer songs, all of these ebbs and flows, all of these almost continuous resets really makes for a great fun experience as far as the overall record is concerned, because you're not able to start to define patterns beforehand so that the album doesn't fall prey to feeling repetitive. It doesn't become mundane. It's an album that sounds as fresh the first time that you listen to it as it does the 10th time that you're listening to it. A lot of that really comes from how these songs are presented. So great track list, great design, great structure for this record. Once you get down to the sound of this album, I was not surprised that this album has a heavy orchestrational presence in the sound, in the atmosphere that same sound creates, in the mood of the songs. That didn't surprise me at all. That's always been a part of the band's DNA, and perhaps is a little bit more guided on this album. I felt like this record, from that standpoint, feels like it's more connected with the message of the songs, with the lyrical content of the songs, and like I said before, with the vibe that the song gives. The part about this album that surprises me a little bit more, as far as the sound is concerned, is how connected this record is sound-wise to the more metal rock sound of the band, or that side of the band. This album relies heavily on the drums, on the guitars to be the main component of what the overall sound is. In some previous records, sometimes the orchestrational pieces were so powerful or so integrated into the overall sound of the band that synth sound kind of became the defining element, and the guitars and drums sometimes kind of got lost within the mix as far as these elements are concerned and how they cooperate with one another. It's not the case with this record. This record has a defined experience on what it wants and what it's giving as far as drum sound and guitar sound are concerned. The drums on this record feel fuller, and I think that's an important aspect, because you can make a song sound big without necessarily relying solely on the orchestral pieces. You can make a song sound a lot bigger if the drums give it the right emphasis. And on this album, I felt like the drums did just that. They created the right emphasis for the songs to have a much larger footprint, but they also added a little bit of heaviness, a little bit of thickness to the sound, which in my opinion allows that more metal rock sound to come to the surface a lot easier and a lot quicker on a track-by-track basis. And you could say the same about the guitars. The guitars on this album are not Slayer heavy, but considering Edge of Paradise, their sound, their discography, the guitars are quite heavy on this album. They have a bite, they have thickness, they have an impact. They're not just there to create melody, they're not just there with great riffs, with great melodies. They're there also to put this fingerprint on the album that this is first and foremost a rock metal record. So the guitars are playing a very important role in defining that experience from the first song all the way to the last song. Obviously on ballads, that is a little bit lost because the song doesn't need thickness, it doesn't need heaviness, it needs melody, it needs atmosphere, it needs ambiance. And the guitars are there to also create that experience. But outside of that, in the more dynamic and the more driven songs like Falling Lights, songs like Martyr, for example, two of my favorites on the record. On songs like these, the guitars definitely push themselves a little bit more into the forefront, and you can hear it. You can feel the heaviness of the guitars and a little bit of darkness that comes with it. Now, once you go to the vocal performance, this is Margarita's best vocal performance in Edge of Paradise. I don't think she's ever sounded this good on any record. She is phenomenal song in and song out. Doesn't matter the mood, doesn't matter the atmosphere, it doesn't matter the settings. Her delivery sounds and feels not only organic, it feels very emotional and connected with the lyrical content. This is definitely, to me, an album that for her comes from a very deep place within. Not to say that previous records didn't, but this one was triggered by something completely different that we hadn't seen before. In her performance at times, while not becoming unhinged, very controlled, but she pushes to that edge of almost becoming unhinged without necessarily crossing it. And when you can do that, the emotional side of the performance comes through, and it adds incredible quality to the overall record, to the individual songs, and definitely to how it represents that same lyrical content. When I look at her performance on this album, and when I look at the sound and the more impact that I saw from drums and guitars together as one, this is for me the band's best record. The most complete album, the album that really feels like it had a sense of focus, a sense of purpose, where everybody is pulling in the same direction, and that is really important for the overall album to have a sense of cohesiveness. Not that previous records didn't have this experience. I don't think any album before this was this defined, this well crafted, this well experienced record as a whole, with great individual tracks that make the overall as strong as possible. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Sad Life of a Rose. The drums and guitars offer a very substantial sound on this song. The guitars really peek through with a very creative guitar sound, with very creative melodies, with a very warm presence. And then the orchestrational side of the song really dictates not only the size of the track, but the atmosphere and the vibe that the track offers. But the overall thickness in the drum sound, in the guitar sound, is where you start to see that heaviness slowly creeping in and becoming part of the fabric of the track itself. The vocals lift off. Everything is at this level, and then the vocals are miles above it. That is the case on every single track, and I think this allows the vocals not to get lost within the sound, to be above it, to be separated from it, so you can feel some of the heavier portions of the track. And this is true throughout the entire album, but you can hear some of the heavier portions of the track, and then you can feel the vocals above it, creating room for two different lanes to coexist parallel to one another. Overall, this is also a very dark song. It has a dark vibe, it has a dark experience to it. It brings the mood down, it really sinks in the mood. It's perhaps almost a doom-inspired song, if you will, without sounding like a doom song at all. Next, you have Martyr. Martyr is one of the most powerful songs on the record, one of the most dynamic songs on the record. Musically, it feels very explosive. It has size, it has heaviness, specifically once you get to the chorus. I love the way the chorus pops on this song. Everything builds up towards it, and then the chorus doesn't disappoint, because the chorus has not only a great vocal performance behind it, it also has a very great drum and guitar sound together that really allows the riff to come through. It really allows that portion of the sound to become the one that dictates the vibe, not the orchestral pieces that are behind it, but rather the more meat and potatoes of the drums and guitars together, even though the orchestral pieces on this track are really well intertwined with the overall sound, but they become more part of the texture of the fabric of the song. But what you see from the top, it's always more geared towards the drums and guitars. They dominate more of the experience of the track, and the other elements are there to create that vibe, to create that atmosphere of the song. Once again, the vocals are phenomenal. Really emotional performance on this track. This is one of those where she pushes that line of almost becoming unhinged without crossing it, still feeling very controlled, but at the peak of her emotions, and that allows a track like this to be super memorable. When you think of that vocal performance, when you think of how good the chorus sounds, both from a musical standpoint but also from a vocal delivery standpoint, this song is definitely one of the standout tracks of the record and one of the most emotional ones. Speaking of emotional songs, Falling Light is another one. This is the closing track of the record, and I love the layers that the vocals have on this track. It really helps the vocals gain a little bit of size without changing any of the dynamics of the song, which would allow this track to feel a little bit disconnected from the rest of the record. So adding those layers, in my opinion, really helps the track. It helps the mood of the song, and it helps connect the vocal performance a lot better with the sound itself. The drums sound really good on this track. It's a more modern melodic metal song, if you will. It has all of these more modern melodic metal touches to it in terms of how the keys and the orchestrations work intertwined with the drums and guitars to create a very powerful presence as far as the track is concerned. It's also a very driven rock metal song because it depends heavily on that drum guitar sound to push the song forward, to propel the song forward. It's a track that also has a sense of darkness to it, perhaps not as well defined as in Martyr, but definitely it's there. It comes across specifically, once again, in the vocal performance. This is a song that brings a little bit of goosebumps when you're listening to it because those vocals really hit home. She's able to not only sing the lyrics but create emotion towards those lyrics. It feels deeper. It's a track that takes the listener in a deeper journey into the person who created it. So the way she delivers it vocally really allows for that experience to be as embracing as you can make it. Great song all around, and what a way to close this record. A very dark at times and emotional album, to be sure. This is it, Edge of Paradise with Prophecy, out March 7th on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next one. Take care, guys.